We are live.
Hey, welcome to Front Office Pros, everyone. I'm Dustin, filling in for Steve. We got Joe here. We're here live with sit starts for Week 6 of the NFL season. Joe, how's it going?
Good. I'm doing well. How are you doing, Dustin?
I'm good. I'm curious your thoughts as a Broncos fan. What are your thoughts on tonight's game and the swirling rumors of Jerry Jeudy possibly getting traded?
Yeah, I'm not, at this point as a Broncos fan, just not putting too much emotion or anything into these games. Definitely not expecting them to beat the Chiefs tonight. And I do think that we will see Jeudy get traded. I think the rumors are heating up for him. Broncos just need picks at this point, and he's one of the assets I feel like they could get a decent amount for. And Frank Clark is another guy out that's definitely out the door at this point.
Yeah, rumors are they're going to either cut or trade Frank Clark by an end of next week, is what I was reading. So I agree with you. The Broncos need picks after trading for Russell Wilson, trading for Sean Payton. They need to get some picks. Judy's the likely candidate. I think Judy's more likely than Sutton. I think Marvin Mims fills in that Judy role better than he does the Sutton role. But if they're totally packing in, they could trade both and hope that Tim Patrick can stay healthy next year or draft a guy to replace Sutton. But I do think Judy's gone. Let's talk about tonight's game. Chiefs. Obviously really good. Travis Kelce's going to play. Is there a receiver on the Chiefs that you think can separate himself from that glob of just meh?
I think if there's one guy to emerge, it's going to be the rookie Rashee Rice. I know he's had the drop issues, but I just feel like he is the guy. Sky Moore, we've seen him last year, and then this year just not impressed with him. MVS has really not ever been that guy. He's just more the deep threat every once in a while. Justin Watson's okay, but I think Rashee Rice would be that guy.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think Rashee Rice is definitely the guy to emerge. Sky Moore has just been meh. Tony can't stay healthy. So I like Rashee Rice. I called for it in my sit start article over at QB List for him to kind of be the one to maybe separate himself and see an increased workload. Broncos side, are you starting Jerry Jeudy? Are you starting Courtland Sutton tonight?
I'm definitely not starting Courtland Sutton. Jeudy would be the guy that I would take a flyer on. I don't really feel great about starting any of the Broncos tonight. I think outside of that, maybe McLaughlin would be the only other Bronco that I might be willing to take a flyer on.
Yeah, McLaughlin's injury. I think Javonte Williams is going to play. Last time I saw, it looks like he's active. So I think that does limit McLaughlin's upside, but I like his ability to kind of sneak in there if they want to ease Javonte in. At some point, Broncos are just going to pack it in and be like, hey, we're not starting our stars and we're just going to bench you and let you rest up and get healthy, because we've seen with Javonte, like, injuries are just already racking up in his young career. So there's a couple other guys like, we'll get into Isaiah Pacheco later, but I think he's a smash play this week. We'll talk about that when we get to running backs. But if you guys have sit start questions, drop them in the comments below. We'll love to answer you. So Jason, good evening. Hope all is well with you as well. Looks like he's saying, I feel that I'm in good shape for this week, but want to get your thoughts. Josh Allen, DJ Moore, Gabe Davis, lost Justin Jefferson. That's a shame. Kamara, Pollard, Ferguson, and Ridley, Raiders D. Real solid team, in my opinion. My only concern is Ferguson. Not the best tight end option in terms of volume and opportunities, but I think you have a good lineup that can cover that. Obviously, you lost Justin Jefferson, so that hurts, but having DJ Moore, Gabe Davis definitely helps you out. Joe, what do you think about this roster for this week?
Yeah, I like it. I think it's good. I mean, you got some nice matchups. Obviously, Calvin Ridley in there. We'll talk about him more. I like DJ Moore, and Gabe Davis's ceiling plays as well. And then, I'm not as down on Jake Ferguson. I think he's a solid tight end. He just had, Dallas has just been up and down, but they have the Chargers this week. I think he's going to have a comeback week.
Yeah, and the Chargers are weak against it, and Peyton Hendershot did go on IR, so that does kind of open up a few extra opportunities for Ferguson. Not that there's a ton, but Hendershot was getting some, I guess, red zone looks, and was eating a little bit into his timeshare. My issue with Ferguson is he's playing 65% of the snaps and 7 targets, 4 targets, 7 targets, 7 targets, 3 targets. So even if he gets 7, he hasn't caught more than 5. Well, he caught 7 1 week, 7 and 5, but usually he's around 2, 3. Just not a high yardage guy. Yeah, he's okay. I wonder if there's a better option for you, Jason, on waivers. But let's dive into our smash sleepers and stinkers of the week. I'll start with my smash quarterback of the week, and that is Matthew Stafford of the Los Angeles Rams. I think we've seen Stafford be healthy this year. That was my big concern coming in. I think he's playing a weak Cardinals defense that allowed the 4th most fantasy points per game to QBs this season. He got cut back last week. Puka's still there. The connection hasn't missed. Arizona's 7.8 yards per passing attempt. What do you think of Stafford this week, Joe?
Yeah, I like him.
Was that yours, and did I steal that?
Yeah, it was mine, but that's all right. Dustin, you're just kicking it off. But yeah, I do like Stafford as a smash play. I like the matchup against the Cardinals. Obviously with all the different stats that you mentioned there. And then this is second week we get to see Kupp and Puka. I mean, they dominated the target share, and Stafford and Kupp's relationship, man, they didn't skip a beat, and I think it keeps rolling here.
Sorry, I stole yours. I had Stafford as a smash as mine on my list as well. Do you think that trend continues where both Puka and Cooper Kupp can have good weeks with Stafford against the Cardinals this week?
Yeah, I do. I mean, I was concerned about that with the first week, but the fact that, Kupp looked so good this first week back, but then Puka still had the workload. I think they both have room to eat in this offense, and I think, maybe somebody like Tutu Atwell gets affected the most. And surprisingly, they really haven't used Tyler Higbee at all this year. No. So obviously, he's down the list as well. But those top 2 guys, I don't see why Stafford can't feed both of them.
Yep, and they traded away Van Jefferson, so that's one less mouth to feed, even though Van Jefferson was only getting 3 targets a game. So let me ask you this, Joe. You starting Matthew Stafford or Jared Goff this week?
Yeah, that's interesting. But I would actually I'd start Stafford over Jared Goff.
Okay, I like that. What about Stafford over Joe Burrow?
Yeah, even though Joe Burrow looked like he came back to life a little bit against the Cardinals defense that we're talking about here with the Matthew Stafford matchup, I think I would lean Stafford still over Joe Burrow. He's at home against the Seahawks. I think I just want to see it one more week with Joe Burrow potentially.
And then what about Stafford or Trevor Lawrence?
Yeah, that's a tough call. Honestly, you can't go wrong with either of these guys, but yeah. I'd be going probably Trevor over him. We saw week 1 was, Trevor Lawrence's one of his better weeks was against this Colts defense. Then he had a pretty good week, surprisingly, against the Bills in terms of yardage. So I think he keeps that momentum going this week.
Yeah, I think I would take Stafford over Goff and Burrow and Lawrence. I just wrote an article on Trevor Lawrence, so I'm kind of down on him in general, but I like that pick. I'll go to my sleeper since I stole your smash as well, but I'll go to my sleeper. Desmond Ridder for the Atlanta Falcons playing the Commanders, who are giving up the 3rd most fantasy points to quarterbacks. They just added Van Jefferson, who we talked about. I don't think he gets a ton of work still working in that offense, but I think that's a piece that can draw some coverage to the other side of the field. I think adding Van Jefferson shows confidence in Ridder a little bit. So I like that they're willing to invest around him and not going, hey, we're just going to go to Taylor Heinicke. He had a good week 5, currently ranked as QB 26 on Fantasy Pro. So I like him as a sleeper this week in fantasy for you guys. If you have Desmond Ridder, that's where I'm at.
Yeah, I mean, I found it interesting that you had him in here as your sleeper, but, I think it's deserving, and, the Commanders matchup, should be good for this offense. And just with Ridder, it's just all a matter of like the passing volume and his opportunities. But he did have a good week last week, so we'll see if he keeps it going. Because surprisingly, too, the Texans are pretty good against quarterbacks with that secondary. So the fact that he was able to do that last week was pretty impressive.
And I think it's going to be a tight game. Like, I think I'm not expecting a blowout on either side, but I'm expecting a 21-20 game where they're going to be in it and they're going to be passing all game. So I don't expect them to just abandon the pass to go to the run. Bijan and Tyler Algier have been decent pass catching out of the backfield. So I just think there's enough weapons there for Ridder to be good. I think he's going to have volume. So I'm happy for Ridder as my sleeper.
Yeah, definitely. So let's compare Ridder to some other guys you'd potentially be starting. How about Dak Prescott or Desmond Ridder?
That's a tough one. I think Dak has a bounce back week. I'll say this. I am anti-red zone. I think if the 49ers Dallas game is at 3:00, no one makes a big deal, but because no one's watching it because they're watching Red Zone. People don't watch games during the week. It just happened to be on prime time, so everybody's watching it. So everybody blew that Dak Prescott game out of proportion. And it's against the 49ers, which is the best defense in the league. So I think Dak has a good week. If I have to make the decision for my fantasy matchup, I'm probably starting Dak, but I see a way that Ritter outscores him. It's just hard to pull that trigger. You drafted Dak to be your starter on your fantasy team. You drafted Ritter to be that kind of sleeper on your team, and we haven't seen enough history of that, but I think there's a possibility outscores him, but I'm probably still rolling Dak because I personally am risk averse.
Yeah, I think I agree with that. I think Dak Prescott does make a comeback week, and I would be comfortable starting Dak over Ritter. But how about the surprising guy this year? How about Baker Mayfield or Desmond Ritter?
That's a tough one. I've been historically out on Baker. They're coming off a bye, which I like in terms of like what that does for an offense and what they can do for that. I don't love the matchup against Detroit. I think Detroit can put up points, so I think they're going to be in a passing situation. So I'm probably starting River over Baker, but that's a real tough one for me.
Yeah, I think that's a tough call. But I would probably lean Baker myself.
Yeah.
But how about Joe Burrow or Desmond Ritter?
Listen, I think this comes down to me if T. Higgins plays or not. It looks like T. Higgins will, and if T. Higgins plays, I'm starting Joe Burrow, but if he's not, I'm not starting Joe Burrow. Yes, he had a great week last week, but 1 out of 5 does not make me real excited for Joe Burrow. Seattle, and then they have a bye. So it could be a trap game where they're kind of looking towards the bye to get healthy, so it could not be the best thing. I probably start, and it's tough because Joe Burrow has the name. Joe Burrow's been the top 5 guy you had and has been, and Ritter has not. I might lean Ritter if T. Higgins isn't playing.
How come it matters so much if T. Higgins plays or not?
I just think that opens up another avenue for them. The Seahawks have a great secondary. I think they can strict Tariq Woolen or Devin Witherspoon on Chase. And I don't know that Boyd and Tyler Irwin and all those other guys can afford enough opportunities on the other side against another good corner. So if Chase is locked down by a top corner, you're talking about subpar guys going against another top corner on the other side. I think T. Higgins against, let's say it's Chase and Woolen, and then you've got T. Higgins versus Devin Witherspoon. I think T. Higgins elevates that and gets open. I think he has the experience to do that where I don't think Boyd and Tyler Irwin can.
Yeah, I think that's fair. You know, for me, probably regardless, I would probably be playing Burrow. It's hard.
It's hard to make. It's a bold move. It's a bold move to not start Joe Burrow.
I mean, I get, Ritter in the matchup, but it's just like we've seen Ritter look good and then like okay, and then the weapons just aren't there. So I don't know, that would be tough for me. But we do have a couple of comments here from Jason. I just want to pull them up here.
Yeah, pull them up.
So back to, I think he's
on his lineup
talking about the Ferguson standpoint. Logan Thomas and Ertz are available. I would definitely pick up Logan Thomas and play him over Ferguson.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it depends on. I wouldn't want to drop. I guess I would drop Ferguson for Logan Thomas, but if you have another guy on your bench that you can free up and drop him, I think Logan Thomas is a smash play right now. Like he's just keeps performing, and until we see him not perform, I think we're good. They have a tough matchup, but I think the matchup is decent for tight ends. So I think that's a good week for Logan Thomas. He could have another massive week this week, which I'm liking. So I would pick up Logan Thomas. It's surprising me that he's still on the bench, considering how good he has been the past few weeks.
Yeah, I wouldn't think you could pick him up, but he's out there. I would definitely pick him up and play him. For whatever reason, I just don't get why the Commanders, they're just starting the tight end position, just throwing in I had high hopes for Dotson and McLaurin, but that's just not happening. But he does have another comment here as well. Says, in your opinion, who has been the most surprising team and who has been the most disappointing team? And I can't say the Broncos.
Disappointing team. I mean, I think you have to say the Vikings, right? Like, won the division last year, were a outside Super Bowl contender in the NFC. This year looked just bad. Now losing Jefferson, they're my big disappointing. Most surprising team for me. Oof. I have to think about that. Do you have a disappointer or a surprise this year, Joe?
To me, the surprising to me, I think, is the Bucks. I didn't think they're really going to compete that much in the NFC South there. Baker's playing a heck of a lot better than I ever imagined he would. So they're definitely my surprise. As far as a disappointing team other than my Broncos, maybe I do think the Vikings are a decent one, even though I did think they had some regression heading their way just because of their record again in those one-score games. But I think it probably maybe the Jets, just because of how they got Aaron Rodgers. The buzz was there. They were Super Bowl contenders. Then they lose Aaron Rodgers, and Zach Wilson has been getting better, but it just doesn't have the same buzz and belief there.
Yeah, and I'll tell you a surprising thing that I don't find surprising, but I think a lot of people do, is the Houston Texans and CJ Stroud. I think people expected them to not be great. They're okay. That's 2-3. Stroud's look really good so far. But I think that's a surprise for them to be in the contention for that division, where I think people thought they'd have a top 5 pick again this year. So I think they're surprising for a lot of people. I was always a believer in Stroud, so I'm not super surprised by it, but I think a lot of people are. So speaking of Stroud, Joe, let's get into your stinker QB for the week.
Yeah, I didn't want to do this. I believe I was a Stroud believer as well, Dustin. I told our good colleague here, Steve, that he was the best rookie quarterback coming out of the draft. But
was, always will be best QB from the draft.
100%. But this week he is playing a tough Saints defense that's only allowing 197.6 passing yards per game. And he has the second worst quarterback matchup rating according to the PFF strength of schedule tool as well. I really like CJ Stroud this season, but this week I'm looking to pivot off him.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, he's been super not surprising, but super good, super efficient this year. It is a tough matchup. I don't think you drafted him to be your starter on your team, so I think you probably have a pivot option. I think you've been excited to be able to play him maybe last week with a lot of buys. This week, we only have 2 teams on bye, so there's not a ton of need to start CJ Stroud. I think he's great to have on your bench this week, but I agree with you, bench him. So are you starting CJ Stroud or Brock Purdy this week?
Yeah, I'm definitely playing Brock Purdy. Just that San Francisco offense and just the whole as a team, man, they're just rolling.
Yeah, you can't not start any 49er at this point. Like, they're all good. I mean, people are looking at starting, the backups like Elijah Mitchell, who's not even playing. Like, they just want to start someone in that offense because it's exciting. Are you starting CJ Stroud or Baker Mayfield?
Yeah, I would go Baker in that scenario. ESPN's got it rated as the 21st defense that they're going up against. I do like the matchup for Baker.
Let me ask you this one. We originally were going to talk about Deshaun Watson, but it sounds like Deshaun Watson is going to be inactive for this week, surprisingly, which is a whole other situation. Sounds like PJ Walker is going to get the start there in Cleveland. Are you starting CJ Stroud or PJ Walker this week?
Yeah, and that event, I am going to play CJ Stroud. If you have Watson or just a Cleveland quarterback, I just roll CJ Stroud out there. Browns also have the 49ers defense. I would not advise that.
Not want anything. As much as you want everything in the 49ers offense, you want nothing to do with whoever the defense is playing because that defense is stacked.
Correct.
Let's move on to the running back position. I'll give you my smash. He's playing tonight. It is Isaiah Pacheco. Let's face it, Denver's defense is the worst. They're getting up the most points to running backs, the most points to quarterbacks. I think like the 5th most to wide receivers. We saw Miami run all over them. We saw pretty much everyone run all over them. I really like what Pacheco has been doing in this offense. I love his rushing style. He's not a patient rusher. It kind of looks like Fred Flintstone, where his feet are just going a miles a minute, but he's not moving. And I love it because he just keeps grinding and churning and going, and he picks up those extra 2 yards per carry. He's not necessarily the greatest when he goes outside, which is, I think, where Denver really gets burnt. But I think that offensive line for Kansas City can open up holes on the inside and he can find some room. He's got a little bit of burst to him. He doesn't have long distance speed, but he's got that little bit of quick burst. I think Isaiah Pacheco is a smash this week. I think it'd be a huge play for you, especially on a Thursday night. It's fun to have someone on Thursday night, and I think we could see a big Isaiah Pacheco game tonight.
Yeah, I can't disagree with you here. I mean, every running back and just all your fantasy players just been absolutely going off thus far against the Broncos defense, and definitely doesn't stop here. It's so interesting. You mentioned the cartoonish with Pacheco's legs. I mean, there's not a guy that looks like he's running harder than him in the NFL, but yet he just chugs along.
It looks like he's on a treadmill that no one else is on. Like he's just got to run so much faster just keep his legs on. I don't know what it is. It's like in the cartoons where they like run in place for a minute and they like speed up and then like take off. That's what he's like. He just runs his little like, and it's literally looks like his lower legs, like from his knees down, where they're just like, and his upper body's just still, and he's just, and it just takes off. Love it.
Yeah. Yeah. And, you know, you're going to need somebody like him to be in your lineup to make this game exciting for you. But let's go over to some comparisons. Who else you're starting here? Are you starting Raheem Mostert or Isaiah Pacheco?
I'm going to start Pacheco. I like Mostert, especially with Devin Achane being on IR. I still think Pacheco has a higher upside, I think, in this offense because I don't think Denver can score points. So I think KC will run the ball. I'm a little concerned that the KC gets up big enough where they throw in some backups. So you see CEH out there, but I'm still starting Pacheco over Mostert this week.
Interesting. But I think I got to agree. The Broncos matchup's too good, but it's tough, man. Mostert's been, I think he's like the, RB 2 or 3 on the year. He's been good. But this matchup's just too good to pass up. How about another guy that's done really well this year, David Montgomery or Isaiah Pacheco?
Originally, I had said Pacheco in my mind. Now with Gibbs potentially not playing, Laporta potentially not playing, Amon-Ra St. Brown potentially not playing, I think David Montgomery might get more volume and has been super efficient. So I think it's a toss-up. I wouldn't fault anybody for starting Pacheco, right? If you want someone in the Thursday night game, you like the upside. That matchup is so juicy, but I think I'm leaning slightly now towards David Montgomery just because of all the other injuries on the Detroit Lions.
Yeah, I think I agree. Plus, I just like the touchdown upside that Montgomery gives you. And the Kansas City Chiefs, they get to the red zone. They just have so many options. And if Pacheco doesn't break off like a 20, 30-yard touchdown, he may not find the end zone. So
that's a real good point. Yeah, the red zone work for Pacheco's not there. I mean, it could be CH, it could be McKinnon with the little like flip pass that Mahomes does. They have options.
They just have the unstoppable route with Kelsey just like runs to a spot and turns around and is wide open in the end zone. That makes no sense, but he's open every time.
And apparently Taylor Swift's at the game, so we're expecting a big Kelsey game. So yeah.
Oh yeah.
Touchdown upside isn't there for Pacheco.
Yeah. But how about the last one here? How about Austin Ekeler or Pacheco?
And this is tough. Coming back for an injury off a bye week, I hope they get Ekeler in. Obviously, they need someone because the rest of the Josh Kellys and Isaiah Spillers have not been good for them. I just worry that Eckler's not 100%. So I might lean Pacheco for 1 week and 1 week only over Austin Ekeler, which again seems scary because Austin Ekeler was a top 5 pick for you most time. Like he was your first round pick. So it's scary to not start him, but I think I might lean Pacheco just for the volume upside because if the Chargers get up on Dallas, they might just take him out just to save his health. So I think there might be more volume for Pacheco this week. It is a bold move, but I think I'm doing it.
Yeah, I wouldn't be able to do that. But ideally, you could start both of these guys.
Yeah.
In a lot of cases, I don't think this is an either or scenario. I don't know a lot of leagues that you just start one running back, but in the event, I would still roll Ekeler, but hopefully you can start Ekeler and Pacheco because I think both of these guys will do really well.
Yep. So, Joe, who is your sleeper running back this week?
Yeah, sleeper. Now, this guy, it's looking like he's going to play. Going with running back Jeff Wilson. You mentioned Achane on the IR. It looks like, from the latest thing I saw was the Dolphins offensive coordinator said Jeff Wilson was trending to play on Sunday, and they've got a good matchup against the Panthers defense. Panthers ranking the bottom 5 against running backs and rush yards per carry allowed with 5.2, rushing touchdowns allowed with 8, and then an explosive run rate allowed at 9.8%, and then yards before contact per rush allowed is at 2.26. And the Dolphins like to utilize 2 running backs in this backfield. We've seen it with Mostert and Achane. We saw it last year, after Jeff Wilson came over. Wilson and Mostert, a lot of weeks it was frustrating because you didn't know which guy was going to get the bulk of the carries, but we've seen them work in tandem before. And if Jeff Wilson plays, great matchup here.
No, I agree with you on that. I think Achane being on IR definitely opens the room for Jeff Wilson, who's coming back off IR. Looks like he should play. Obviously, they brought him over for a reason last year, so I think it's a good start. Panthers are giving up like the second most fantasy points to running backs. They're abysmal. They're not quite Broncos bad, but they're close to it. So are you starting Jeff Wilson Jr. or your Javonte Williams for your Denver Broncos this week? Or Jaleel McLaughlin if you want to put McLaughlin in there instead of Williams, depending on your thoughts on there.
Yeah, well, I had put Javonte in there knowing he was going to be the starter. So, but either way, I think I'd be comfortable going with Jeff Wilson over both.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. How about Dameon Pierce for the Houston Texans or Jeff Wilson?
Yeah, I would go with Jeff Wilson here. We mentioned it with CJ Stroud. That Saints defense is just a bad matchup in general. So I'd be going Jeff Wilson over Dameon Pierce.
And then how about Jeff Wilson or Breece Hall?
Yeah, this is interesting. I know Breece Hall just came off a really good week against the Broncos, but who doesn't? I think I'd be willing to roll Jeff Wilson over him as well.
I agree. And that leads me into my stinker of the week, which is Breece Hall. He's playing against the Eagles D, which is just stout. Yeah, it's like we planned it this way. The Eagles are giving up the fewest fantasy points to running backs. We could see some short passes there. I just don't love the pressure they're going to put on Zach Wilson, which is what Zach Wilson struggles with. I just see them getting behind in the game where they're going to have to pass more so Garrett Wilson could see it and Allen Lazard could see targets. I don't love Breece Hall this week. I think if you can avoid starting him, I think you do. And I think you might be able to based on where you drafted Breece Hall and the guys you've been able to pick off waivers. So if you got DeMarcado, if you picked up, Miles Sanders, who looks like the player, or Chuba Hubbard, if he starts, you might be able to put one of your waiver guys in over Breece Hall. So I'm sitting Breece Hall this week.
Yeah, I think it's a good call, but it's tough because with Breece Hall, we even saw it in the Denver game. They bottled him up a lot, but that one carry in the second half, 70-yard touchdown. He's got that ability, but you're not wrong though. If it doesn't happen against this Phillies defense, you're going to be very disappointed.
Yeah.
But how about some comparable starting players here?
I think we lost.
Oh boy.
I think we lost you there.
Yeah, it looks like Wi-Fi issues here. But I was mentioning, are you starting? Oh, it's still going?
Nope, you're good.
I'm good. All right. So are you starting Brian Robinson Jr. or Breece Hall?
I'm going to start Brian Robinson. I like what I've seen from him. The only concern with Brian Robinson is when they get down and get in clear passing game scripts, it's Antonio Gibson, but I like what Brian Robinson's doing. Easier matchup. Anything's easier matchup than the Eagles, unless it's maybe the 49ers. So I'm going to start Brian Robinson this week.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you on that one. How about Rachaad White or Breece Hall?
Listen, I'm a big Rachaad White believer. He hasn't really seen the volume or efficiency we've expected for him in Tampa Bay. Obviously, Baker's been better at throwing the ball, but I like them coming off a bye and being able to work him in and taking that extra week to implement a game plan. So I'm going to start Rachaad White over Breece Hall this week.
I would go Breece Hall over Rachaad White.
You hoping for that one big play?
I'll hope for the one big play, but I mean, Rachaad White doesn't have a good matchup against the Detroit Lions either.
No,
they're a tough team to run on. And I just trust the athleticism and the ability of Breece Hall more than I do Rachaad White.
That's fair.
Yeah. But how about Miles Sanders or Breece Hall?
Well, it looks like Miles Sanders isn't going to play, so I'll substitute Chuba Hubbard in there. I'm going to start Breece Hall over those guys. Carolina just sucks. Like they don't have a good offensive line, which isn't opening up room for the running backs. It's not protecting the quarterback. So you're keeping the running back in there to pass block. I'm not going to start any of those guys. So I'll start Breece Hall and hope for that, efficiency game or that one big play where I can get some points.
Well, since it's not Miles Sanders and it's going to be Chuba Hubbard, I would be willing to throw in Chuba Hubbard.
Really?
This matchup against the Dolphins is a really, they're, a nice matchup for the rushing defense. And honestly, they've been, to me, one of the more disappointing defenses. And I get that they don't have Jalen Ramsey, but just thought that with Vic Fangio coming in there, this defense would be playing better. And, Chuba's been out rushing Miles Sanders and outperforming him when he's getting the chances. So if he gets chances in his ability to receive the ball too, I would go with Chuba.
Interesting. Looks like we got a comment from our good friend Craig over at Roto Heath. This is an IDP question, so you're gonna have to fill this one, Joe, because I don't play IDP. Sit one: Kyle Duggar, Antoine Winfield, or not even Talana Hufanga. Hufanga. There we go.
Yeah, safety for the 49ers.
I knew that.
Yeah.
Which one are you sitting, Joe?
Yeah, that's a tough call, Craig, but I think I'd probably sit Kyle Duggar on that and roll with Antoine Winfield and Hufanga.
Yeah, I know very little about IDP, but I know Hufanga is a great safety linebacker for the 49ers, and they're playing the Browns, who kind of suck, so I think he can rack up a ton of tackles. But I have no clue about Duggar or Winfield. I know Kyle Duggar's good. I know Winfield's good, so I think that's a tough one. But thanks for the question. If you guys have other questions, drop them in the comments. We'll love to help you out with your sit-start decisions. Offense or defense, we cover it all here at Front Office Pros. So let's
I think especially with PJ Walker potentially playing Hufanga, I mean, he comes on blitzes,
gets interceptions.
I think it'll be a good play.
So let's go to your smash wide receiver of the week, Joe. Who do you got for a smash wide receiver?
Yeah, my smash wide receiver of the week, I'm going to go with Calvin Ridley. We saw Calvin Ridley had a breakout game in week 1. I'm going to bet on it happening again in this matchup against the Colts. In week 1, he went 8 for 101 and a touchdown. And, Jags have the third best wide receiver matchup rating this week, according to the PFF strength of schedule tool. And Indy has allowed the 13th highest PPR points per target to outside wide receivers this season.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, Colts are giving up like the 10th most points to wide receivers. It's a good matchup for Ridley. I think he's coming on. I think he's the safety valve for Trevor Lawrence at times when things get kind of hairy there. So I like it. Are you starting Calvin Ridley or Jalen Waddle of the Dolphins?
Yeah, I'd be willing to go with Calvin Ridley over Jalen Waddle. I think, Jalen Waddle's got the name, but lately he just hasn't been as involved in the offense. And to me, he's been kind of touchdown dependent.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, he was dealing with some injuries, but I do think he is more touchdown dependent compared to like Tyreek Hill, who can get those. Tyreek Hill can have like 3 catches for 100 yards, and you're set. What about Calvin Ridley or Davante Adams?
Yeah, this is where it gets interesting. But I think I would go with Calvin Ridley. I know the Patriots, they've been rough, but I think Belichick still knows how to take away your number 1 receiver on the defensive side. That really hasn't necessarily been their problem.
Yeah.
So I would lean Ridley on that.
I would lean Ridley because I think this is a big revenge game week for Josh McDaniels and Jacoby Myers against the Patriots. So I'll take the revenge game narrative where they'll have good games and they'll shut down Davante Adams. And we just talked about Davante Adams, the grizzled veteran. Calvin Ridley or the newcomer Puka Nacua?
Yeah, this is interesting. I think I would still go with Ridley over Puka. I do like both. They both have really good matchups. I just think Ridley possibly has the higher ceiling there. If Cooper Kupp wasn't there, I probably would have rolled with Puka.
Yeah, I do think Kupp. I think it normalizes a little more where we see Kupp take more targets and more, and I think Puka's doesn't fall off the map, but I think he comes down a little bit back to earth and normalizes to what a second wide receiver should be in that offense. So I might go Calvin Ridley there. But it's hard to not start Puka when he's just balled out for 5 straight weeks, right? And you got him off waivers and you're super happy about it, or you draft him in the 4th round of your dynasty rookie draft. So part of it is fantasy is fun. So like if Puka is fun for you, start Puka. I'm okay with that.
Yeah, I mean, that's another one of the scenarios, you wish, hopefully you can just play both, but I might actually be willing to bench Davante, in favor of Ridley instead.
No, I agree with you on that one. So my sleeper for the week is Drake London of the Atlanta Falcons. He's seen an uptick in targets. He's seen an uptick in efficiency. I think Van Jefferson pulls enough safety coverage to the other side of the field that I think it affords London a little more room. Washington gives up the 2nd most points to wide receivers, so I think it's a great matchup for it. I'm buying into this Atlanta offense getting it together and slowly becoming better. I don't think Drake London's a top 5 guy. He might borderline the top 10 this week, but I think he's a good sleeper play for you.
Yeah, I like it. I mean, we saw the success that DJ Moore and Justin Fields just had. Not saying that's going to happen for Drake London, but you know, the matchup is there, and you know, if Ritter is able to give him the targets, he should be able to excel. And I see that Jonnu Smith is questionable for this game as well, so that could also help in favor of London.
Yeah,
but let's give some comparable players here. How about Chris Godwin or Drake London?
Yeah, I think I'm going to go Drake London because Drake London should be the top target getter on his team, where I don't think Chris Godwin is. I think that's still Mike Evans. I like Tampa coming off the bye, but I think if you're looking at what they do, I think London can outperform Chris Godwin this week.
Yeah, I probably agree. I mean, Chris Godwin, he's actually been a little disappointing. You know, to my surprise, like Baker's just really hyper targeting Mike Evans, and we'll see if hopefully he's able to go this week. You know, battling the hamstring injury, the bye should have helped last week, but I agree with you on that. How about Jordan Addison or Drake London?
So this is interesting because obviously we have Justin Jefferson going on IR. Who steps into that? Like, what happened to those targets? Do they all go to Addison? Do 70%, 50%, 20% go to Addison? KJ Osborne probably fills up a little more of the role. I'm probably starting Drake London because I've been out on Addison all year. I think Drake London sees more targets than Jordan Addison does. I like the matchup a little bit better. I like the quarterback play a little bit better, which is surprising because I'm a huge Kirk Cousins fan. I'm just not sure Addison gets the volume that people are expecting with Justin Jefferson out.
Oh man, I would be absolutely starting Jordan Addison in the matchup. I like their matchup, and then I just don't think KJ Osborne. People say he's like gonna step up in that Justin Jefferson role, but he's not Justin Jefferson. No. And against the Bears, I like Addison a lot this week.
Yeah, I mean Addison's definitely more of that big play threat. I just don't like a guy who had been playing 30-40% of the snaps. I prefer a guy who's playing 70, 80, 90% of the snaps in London. So that's where I'm at.
Well, now, I mean, this Jefferson injury, though, does kind of force the Vikings' hands in getting that snap count up to Addison. And then, it's interesting. You say you don't like the quarterback play of Kirk Cousins, but he's been so good.
I mean, he's been good. It's just I struggle to trust Kirk Cousins when I need him. And that's my fear, is that when they need him to pick up because Justin Jefferson's out, I wonder if he can do it. I just fear that he just kind of, I don't want to say crumbles under the pressure, but doesn't live up to that level of, I need to elevate my play and be the star for the team because Justin Jefferson's out. I just wonder if he does that this week.
Interesting. Yeah. I mean, we'll see. I'm not too concerned. I think Kirk can get it done, and pretty much as long as it's not in prime time. Although he did have a very good game prime time against the Eagles, he's usually pretty good. But moving on to the last guy here, how about Calvin Ridley or Drake London?
Yeah, I'm starting Calvin Ridley. I agree with everything you said previously. I think Calvin Ridley has a good matchup. I think he's become the alpha. I know we've seen Christian Kirk and Zay Jones have good weeks, but I think Calvin Ridley is the guy. I think that's why they traded for him. So I'm starting Calvin Ridley over Drake London. I think ideally you can probably get both of them into your lineup, especially with like Jefferson being on bye. Some other guys just kind of not performing at that top level. I think you can probably have both of them and fit them in your lineup.
Yeah, I agree. I definitely would start Ridley over Drake London there. But
speaking of Ridley, we got a comment from Hans C. It says, guys, I'm very thin at running back and set at wide receiver. Been starting Ridley in my flex. Trade Ridley for Joe Mixon. Joe, what do you think about this?
Ooh. That is interesting. I'm not so sure I would do that, though. I would probably try to maybe shoot for higher running back possibly, or even if I had to package in Ridley and somebody else. I just, Mixon has been getting the volume, but just the touchdowns and everything haven't been there, and the big playability is not there, and that's where just Ridley, I think, has the higher ceiling there.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think it's a smart move to move Ridley. I just don't think Mixon is the guy I would go for. Mixon's currently RB17 on the year in PPR leagues. I want someone in that range of like 10, 12. So I think you can get a better piece for Mixon. I don't hate it. You're right. Mixon is getting the volume, but he just hasn't been super efficient. Touchdowns aren't coming. Now, obviously, the Bengals offense has been meh and really bad this year so far. So hopefully, it turned around. Mixon does have a bye coming up after this week. They play Seattle, and they're on the bye. So if you're looking towards maybe a playoff run, if you're a good team, maybe you want that. Ridley goes on bye in week 9, so you get maybe a better matchup. Who knows? But I probably don't make that move. I think you get a better running back. I agree with you on that.
Yeah, if I'm willing to trade, Ridley, shoot for somebody higher than the RB17.
Yeah, I mean, shoot for the sky. I mean, you can shoot for. I mean, who should he be shooting for in that instance? I'm trying to think who's a good running back in that range that I'd be looking to add.
Let me see running back rankings.
I mean, I might be looking at someone like if you can get a David Montgomery, if you can get a Kenneth Walker, if you get a Pacheco, if you can get someone like that, I think you're better off in that range. Pacheco's RB13. Montgomery, I think, is RB8. Somewhere in that range, I think you're better off. Josh Jacobs is RB10, so I think you can find someone in those way. Kenneth Walker is RB12, so someone in that range is where I'm looking with a little bit of higher, same volume as Mixon, but maybe just a little bit of a more touchdown upside.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. And then maybe you could even get. You could also target. I think Jonathan Taylor could be interesting in a trade, possibly. I don't know. Maybe you'd have to even something out there. Maybe you can.
Yeah, something.
Depending on how the owner feels about Jonathan Taylor, maybe you could get a JT plus, but he would be another interesting guy. But I like Montgomery, guys like Josh Jacobs. That's kind of the range I'd shoot for.
And I'll tell you what I do when I'm looking at trades this point in season. Look to see who you're playing week 9, because that's when Ridley's on a bye. See if you can trade him to that guy, because you don't have to worry about facing them. So I like that kind of little extra tidbit of trade advice. Like, look where their bye is, trade him to the guy you're playing that week. Don't have to worry about facing the guy you traded away. So, but I think you do better. So let's get into your stinker wide receiver this week, Joe. Who do you have?
Yeah, now that this might surprise some people, but I'm going to go with AJ Brown. I know he's been super good lately. But I don't really like the matchup here against the Jets defense. Philly's ranked the second worst wide receiver matchup rating this week. And Sauce Gardner, I believe, should be the one covering AJ Brown. They do get DJ Reed back as well. And I think, just like we saw, a couple weeks ago, the Chiefs really relied on the run game against the Jets, and I think that's going to be the method that the Eagles will have to attack the Jets defense is that run game. I can see, them really just running swift, getting Hurts going. The quarterback runs in this game as well, and maybe they just don't need to pass as much.
No, I agree with you. I was out on AJ Brown. I was thinking maybe Devonta Smith if DJ Reed didn't come back, but DJ Reed is coming back, so I'm out on both those receivers. I agree with everything you said. So AJ Brown or Puka Nacua this week?
Yeah, this is where I'd roll out Puka over AJ Brown. Like, as we mentioned, that we like the matchup for the Rams. So,
would you do AJ Brown or DJ Moore?
I'm gonna roll the high end and go with DJ Moore against the Vikings.
Nice. And what about obviously I think we know this one: AJ Brown or Calvin Ridley?
Yeah, we talked about this. Our smash player. Going to go with Calvin Ridley there.
Yeah, I think I agree with you on all those. I just don't love the matchup. Sauce has been really good, and he's been able to shut down top end guys. So I'm not starting AJ Brown this week. But that leads me into my tight end smash play, which is Dallas Goedert, tight end for the Eagles. I think given that Brown and Devonta Smith could be shut down the outside, I think that opens up opportunities, targets, and space in the middle for Dallas Goedert, who just had a great week. Jets are giving up the most points to tight ends. I think he's found that role in that offense. So I like Dallas Goedert as a smash play this week.
Yeah. I mean, he really came alive last week after not really doing much. It'd be interesting. The Jets have some really good linebackers. and decent safeties, with Whitehead as well. So it'll be interesting if we can see Goddard get open against those guys, but definitely should. And, I think this could be, as I didn't like A.J. Brown, maybe I think I could see Devonta Smith getting more targets in this game too.
Yeah, I mean, it could be Devonta Smith week. I just don't know if he can handle DJ Reed or, normally when they have one good cornerback, I like it that they can move a guy around and get him off that, but you can't do that with the Jets. They've got two guys on either side, so that's why I like Goddard this week.
Yeah, hard to argue with that. I mean, definitely
target's got to go somewhere.
Yeah, they made him a focal point last week. I could definitely see that happening again. But would you be willing to start Sam Laporta or Dallas Goedert?
It sounds like Sam Laporta might not play, which is interesting. So I'm starting Dallas Goedert just because I don't know about Laporta. If Laporta plays, I'm still starting Goedert because I like what he is in that offense in this matchup versus Laporta, who might be banged up, who might not see as many targets. We got Jameson Williams second game back, so I think they could run more for Detroit. So I like Dallas Goedert over Laporta.
Yeah, I agree with that as well. How about TJ Hockenson?
This is an interesting one because obviously we expect the Justin Jefferson targets to go somewhere. It could be KJ Osborne, it could be Addison, but it could also be TJ Hockenson, who has been the number 2 in that offense. I think he retains that role. I just don't know. I love the Jets matchup. I might lean Hockenson, but I think it's close. But I probably lean Hockenson at this point.
Yeah, I would lean Hockenson as well because I mean, there's just the vacated targets there. He's going to get the work. Yeah. And they got a good matchup against the Bears as well.
Yeah.
How about, tonight's game here, Travis Kelce or Dallas Goedert?
I mean, there's no way you're not starting Travis Kelce, right? I know he's banged up. I know he's injured, but I think you have to start Travis Kelce, especially with Taylor Swift in attendance.
Definitely, and especially against this Broncos defense. Even if Kelce's like 50%, there's no way that the Broncos can cover 50% of Travis Kelce at this point.
I completely agree. So who is your sleeper tight end this week, Joe?
And my sleeper tight end, I'm going to keep rolling with Tyler Conklin here. They keep just rating him so low, but yet he's still interesting and he's getting a high percentage of targets in his Jets offense. He actually led them in receiving last week against the Broncos with 67 yards. And the Eagles are a good matchup for tight ends. They're a good defense overall, but they've allowed the 3rd most fantasy points per game and the 7th most receiving yards to the tight end position so far this year.
I mean, that's just Ty Conklin has been rated so low because he just has not been good. Hey, I'm all for bold calls. I love a spicy take, so I'll let you roll with Ty Conklin. So are you tight end Ty Conklin or Kyle Pitts this week?
See, I would roll out Tyler Conklin over Pitts.
Wow. That's shocking for me, and I hate Kyle Pitts.
Yeah, I mean, I get, Pitts looked decent last week, but the Commanders are actually, good against the tight end position. I know Cole Kmet had a decent game last week, but overall, they've been good against the tight end position. So I'll be willing to gamble on Conklin in this game.
All right, what about Conklin or Jake Ferguson?
Yeah, this is interesting, but I would start Jake Ferguson. I really like his matchup against the Chargers.
Yeah, I think Hendershot going on IR definitely helps Ferguson be a little bit better. Conklin doesn't have the athletic profile for me, so I'd roll Ferguson. And then what about Tyler Conklin or Darren Waller?
Yeah, I'm going Conklin. Wow. Darren Waller's banged up, but the Bills are also I think they're the best defense right now against the tight end position. If they're not the top, they're definitely top 5. They just don't give up those, so I'd be rolling with Conklin.
Yeah, I agree. We might not see Daniel Jones, so I would probably try to find someone other than Darren Waller. I'm not sure I would go with Tyler Conklin, but I want someone other than Waller, so I might just take a shot at it if you don't have any other options.
Hey, I mean, if Logan Thomas isn't out there, Zach Ertz isn't out there to pick up, why not?
Tyler Conklin's the option. Yeah, I mean, if you were rolling Waller and Laporta as your tight ends and you're missing both this week, Conklin might not be a bad waiver pickup. But that leads me to my stinker tight end, which is Darren Waller. I just don't like him this week. I agree. The Bills are giving up the 3rd fewest points to tight ends. No Daniel Jones, possibly. I don't love it. We have, Bills Giants, so we could see a Brian Daboll, Tyrod Taylor, Isaiah Hodgins triple revenge game. So I love it. I just don't think I want to play Darren Waller this week at all.
Yeah, I like all your revenge narrative
Revenge
stuff.
games, yep.
Yeah, I don't really think that Steve necessarily buys into those, but I like that you do because I do.
It's hard to not buy into them because they happen. Like, when do they not happen?
Yeah, that's very true. I mean, there's revenge games happen a lot, and you definitely tend to see those guys extra motivated with play with a little extra edge there. But
yeah,
let's go to some start sit options here. Would you start Logan Thomas or Darren Waller?
There's no way I'm not starting Logan Thomas if I have him. I think he's one of my must starts this week against anybody. Like, if you told me Logan Thomas or Dallas Goedert, I'd probably go Logan Thomas. Like, I think he's just performing well. He's the true number 2 in that offense. He's overtaken Jahan Dotson. Sometimes he overtakes McLaurin for the number 1 option there. So until he shows me he can't do it, I'm rolling Logan Thomas.
Interesting. So you would go Logan Thomas over your smash tight end of the week here.
Yeah, but I think Logan Thomas is like a guaranteed smash. Like, I think people just go, okay, yeah, that's Logan Thomas. I don't understand how he's still on waivers for people. Like, he's just proven it. Once is a fluke, twice is a pattern, 3 times or twice is a trend, 3 times is a pattern. He has a pattern of being good this season. Like, you can't deny that.
Well, I know, last week I had mentioned starting Logan Thomas on our Thursday night preview last week, and Steve raised his eyebrows at me like I was crazy, but then he had that game. So,
well, we all know Steve's takes can be interesting.
Yeah. So how about a guy we just talked about here, Tyler Conklin or Darren Waller?
Yeah, I'm starting Tyler Conklin. I don't want Darren Waller at all right now. Like, I just that offense is just not clicking. If there's no Daniel Jones, I don't love it. I think with Tyrod, we can see some of these other guys step up. Even if it is Daniel Jones, he's been this year. So I'll start Darren Waller. I'll talk Ty Conklin over Darren Waller.
Yeah. Plus, I mean, it's just no matter who's back there, just that offensive line has just been terrible. I mean, Evan Neal's been an absolute turnstile at right tackle. Their left tackle hasn't been much better. So, it just could be a rough night for whoever's at quarterback. But how about staying in this game? Bills tight end group or Darren Waller?
So Knox has a wrist injury. Kincaid has a concussion. If one of them, let's say one of them doesn't play, because it doesn't matter which one, because they're the same guy, right? I'm going to take that Bills tight end over Waller. Now, if both Bills tight ends play, I'm taking Waller because the Bills tight ends siphon enough work off each other that makes them not really startable. But if it's just one of them, I'll start that one, whether it's Kincaid or Knox, because I think they play the same role. They're going to see the exact same targets, regardless of who's playing. I'll take them over Waller. But if both the Bills tight ends play, I'll take Waller for the chance that he can find some room. But I would much rather have one of the Bills tight ends if one of them is playing.
Yeah, I would just roll with Knox. Honestly, it's in Buffalo.
It's in Buffalo.
And I always tell Steve, it just seems every time they play in Buffalo, Knox comes up with a touchdown, and you see that spike in the end zone. I don't think it happened last home game against the Dolphins or whatever, but it happens more often than not, I feel. And it's at the tight end, it's such a crapshoot that if a guy finds the end zone, it's worth the roll.
Yeah, we've talked before. Like, Dawson Knox to me is Buffalo. Like, he just is the Buffalo guy. Like, that's just how he is. And I think coming back from London, I think Knox can have a good game. It's just a matter of if he plays or if Kincaid plays. So I think they're there. So let's finish up this week as we get ready to head for the Thursday night game. Joe, who is your stack of the week?
Yeah, my stack of the week, and I don't think you're going to like it based on our conversations here, but I'm going to go with Kirk Cousins and Jordan Addison. I think Addison is the ceiling guy. He's the deep down the field threat. The vacated targets are there with Justin Jefferson. I think I believe I have the most confidence in Addison to step up and fill that Justin Jefferson role.
And that's an interesting one. I mean, it's not a bad stack to have, especially if you're looking for someone to take those targets. I think you could also roll, Cousins and KJ Osborne, but I think if you believe Addison's the guy, you roll with Addison. My stack of the week is Matthew Stafford and either Puka Nacua or Cooper Kupp. I don't think it matters which one. I think they both see enough volume there. So if you have Stafford and you can roll one of those in your DFS lineups and your baby bowls and your other tournaments, I think that's a great play this week. I'm starting, I think, Kupp and Stafford in baby bowl this week just because I like that stack. So I think that's a good matchup, and I think they've shown that they have connections together.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, if you like Kirk Cousins, don't like my call out with Addison, stack him with TJ Hawkinson too. This matchup, I don't really think it matters with the the Bears, the Vikings are going to get it done.
Yeah, my only issue is that I think the Vikings score points and then they just run the ball with Madison and Cam Akers, so maybe there's just a little less volume towards the end of the game. But they could put up 50 points in the first half and then run the second half, and no one would bat an eye. So that's been week 6. It starts our smash, sleeper, and stinkers for each position, plus the stack of the week. Thank you guys for dropping your questions, for Craig and Hans and Jason. Thanks for dropping in. We love answering questions. We're here every week, Thursday night, 7 p.m. Eastern time, answering your sit starts, giving you our plays. Enjoy tonight's game. Let's go Isaiah Pacheco, our smash running back of the week. Joe, any final thoughts?
Nope, just enjoyed this video with you, Dustin, and not looking forward to go watch the Broncos get destroyed by the Chiefs.
Well, hopefully your Broncos can be all right. All right, everyone, have a good night.
All right, bye-bye.